Okay, howdy everybody. I'm Thomas Blair. I'm the lead designer. One of the things I love to do besides designing and coming up with crazy ideas is actually implementing those crazy ideas. So today I'm going to show you how to build a Myrmidon power. Assuming, of course, you had our tool, which at this stage is super awesome. It was one of the first things we started working on back during the Kickstarter, was a real way to make powers, because your characters are only as good as the powers are. And if you look where I'm at right now on screen, this is what I call our ground plane or our gray box world. People call it the same. It's the same. This is where we have a bunch of stuff set up so the designers can make stuff and experiment on other characters. You'll see we have a group right there. We have a group of 3 over there. And you'll notice I'm on the Myrmidon. That's right. We got enough of him in so that I can show you his run. This is his out of combat run. He looks badass. I can't wait to play this guy. He moves at 6.5 meters a second, which means he's half a meter faster than the knight, the ranger, and the druid. So over here is this wall of stuff that we have built before. So we just kind of tend to put our prefabs over here. We are missing a section for the druid and for the Myrmidon. We got to get on JPO to get those built. But we just like to see what we've built in the past. It's kind of impressive. Okay, so as you see, this is a baseline character. He has a power tray bar that is completely empty. And I am going to show you how we put powers in there. So I've got this thing down here called a new power. I need to name it, and I'm going to name it something I've already pre-typed, which is Myrmidon Demo Berserk. Let's go ahead and name that. And I'm going to throw an icon in there. This is just a test icon, just so you can see it. So let's put an icon in there. And I'm going to stop playing in the background. So next time I come in, you'll see that the power is in there. So we have all these switches here. And let me go back up to the root. Okay, this is the basic of the basis of the power, which is this one box that says power. And in this case, it is the Myrmidon Demo Berserk. It is visible. It triggers combos. It's reticle facing. It requires the player to be grounded. It needs to be Klein immediate. It will put the caster in combat. It is an instant power. Since we want the Myrmidon to be able to use this power at any point, we're also going to make it an interrupt. And he can use it while stunned, knocked down, or suppressed. Okay, so what is the Myrmidon Berserk power going to do for the Myrmidon? Well, it's going to instantly heal all damage that he takes. So as he takes a chunk of damage, it's going to put it into something we call an accumulator and then dump that back out as a heal every second. Which means while this is running, you basically have to kill all of the Myrmidon in less than a second, or wait until this thing times out. Because when the power wears off, he's going to take all that damage that he took over that period of time, which is 15 seconds in this case, at once. So basically our image for this guy always was, he's the guy that just rips apart the battlefield. The battle's over, he looks down and notices guts are spilled all over the battlefield, and he falls over dead. So we're trying to recreate that image, and this one power is the keynote to doing that. So I told you the power was usable while stunned, knocked down, suppressed, as you can see with these checkboxes. I'm also going to change the resource type to Fury, and let's just say this thing costs 20. So surprise there, the Myrmidon uses a resource called Fury. He's not using Rage like our other melee guys, because we wanted to go with something different, because, hey, designers like new things too. So we need to give it no, let's not give it a blackout time. So the very first thing after creating the root of the power is we need to say, what is this power going to do it on? So in this case, we're going to add what we call a delivery mechanism. Now, a delivery mechanism is basically our way of accumulating targets. So in this case, it's called a self-delivery mechanism, which means it's going to happen on me, the person who is doing this thing. So when we select this, we basically say, hey, this is a self, a group, array, an area, a projectile, a field, a source, a proc target, a soft target, or I have no clue what sorting unit test is, but we're just going to stick with self because that's who we want it to apply to. So what is he going to apply to himself? Well, we need to add an effect. Now, in Crowfall, we have all of these things called effects, and many players perhaps know them better as buffs. We put a ton of effects on the player, and we have to manage all of those things. And that's kind of where we get bugs sometimes, is where the effects just step on each other. They don't step on each other when they're supposed to. So this is kind of part of the art of implementing. So you have to kind of know what you're doing. So in this case, what we want to create is what I said before, which is an accumulator. Now, we want to accumulate all of the damage that's coming in on this guy, right? So to make this thing stick around, we have to say this thing lives for a certain period of time. In this case, let's just say this thing is going to live for 15 seconds. Now, you'll notice when I gave it a duration, all of a sudden, the color changed, which is a way to tell the designers, hey, this thing is a thing that lives for a while. Okay? Well, since it lives for a while, we need to give it a group. And I'm going to give it a group so that nothing else steps on it. So I'm going to give it I made a bunch of groups already, so don't worry about that. We're going to give it the Myrmidon Berserker buff group. And we're going to give it a priority. We're going to give it a priority of 1, which basically means I am a thing on this player. So we want to say, hey, what does this look like when it's running? We need to put it into the buff UI widget that's at the side of the screen. So let's give it a name. Let's call it Berserker. And we need to give it an icon. So normally what we do is we grab the icon from the root of the power, and we make that the thing that goes on there. Bam. So in theory, what should happen now is, hit the save button. I'm going to hit the play button and go in and show you what we've done here. Basically, we've created a power which should have an icon that costs 20 Fury that will put a buff on me called Berserker, and it should last for 15 seconds. It doesn't do anything yet, but let's just see what happens. Now, Unity does kind of take a little bit of time here to load. So while it's doing that, I'm going to show you how we start creating a power tray for characters. Now, this is our very first bubble chart that we call it for the night. Now, we did this well over a year ago now, and you can see this was very early on the night because we didn't have the idea of branching combos, etc. But what we do is we come up with a bunch of powers, and we say, let's do this, let's do this, let's do this. Let's put a stun on this one. Let's put a pushback on this one. This one ended up just being a charged ton of damage. Let's put an armor debuff on this one. Well, we don't have armor debuffs on the night anymore, but again, this is a year old. This is what we start with when we start building our powers. I can see that my thing came up in the background. Let's select Myrmidon. And boom, let's select my machine. And then we're going to go in here. Okay, so I'm back in the area where we were before, and you'll now notice in the number 6 slot, I have a power. And does it have a tooltip yet? Yep. Since I didn't put any tooltip data, it defaults to, hey Blair, we need some tooltip text, obviously. Well, what I said is this thing should cost you some Fury, and it should put a buff on you. Let's see if it does that. We activated it. Yep, it put something on me called Berserker, and you saw that it lasted for 15 seconds. Great. Step 1 is done. We have something being attached to the player, which is awesome. Let's redraw that power, and let's go back into this box, and let's start making it do something. So we have all of these little magical switches. Well, let's turn off allow crits, because this thing is a buff, and it's not going to crit. It's not going to cause any hate, so let's just turn that off, because it annoys me when it doesn't. Okay, so we're going to make this thing, what I said before, is an accumulator. Basically, it's like a little bucket that fills up with things.
Are you watching the chat channel?
I can't see chat at all.
Okay, so you want me to take questions?
Yeah, I mean, you can shout out questions as well. Let me get this going, and then we will have some more questions, or some questions. Okay, so we made this an accumulator. So the concept of accumulator, it's a bucket that fills up with something. In this case, we want it to fill up every single time I got hit, which means it's a proc type of a hit. You'll see all these wonderful proc types we have. We're using the hit one now. And we want to do it when somebody did something to me, meaning I got hit by something, right? Which is great. So we also need to put an event filter on there, which means I had a stat changed, and that stat was hit points. In this case, you see our big giant stat list. We have hundreds of stats, and we can use them in all of our powers, which is super awesome. Okay, so less than 0 means that somebody hit me, reduced my hit points, and the value went underneath 0. Great. And that should, let's see, clear on chain. So every time our bucket fills up, we need our bucket to empty. So yeah, we want our bucket to empty. And we need a name for this bucket. So what do we want to call this bucket? It is, when you're making powers, you kind of want to make it useful for the guy who comes next to have to fix your bugs. I'm not saying that I put in a lot of bugs, but it happens. So let's call this bucket damage taken. So whoever looks at this knows, yep, that was damage taken. And what else do we need to do here? We need to make this, since this bucket needs to go off every second, we need to make this thing pulse. So basically, this is a buff that's going to pulse every second by checking this box. Now it's pulsing. It's going to accumulate health every time I get hit, and that hit value was greater than -1. I know it says less, but it's you're going negative because you're taking damage. And then every time the bucket dumps out, we need to clear it. Otherwise, it's going to get stored up. So this should do that, but now it needs to go to something to do something with. So we're going to create another effect. And this effect is not going to crit. It is not going to generate any hate. And what stat do we want it to affect? Well, we want this to heal you for all the damage that you just took. So we're going to go down to the H area and scroll down to hit points. Okay, hit points. Now, how much health do we want to do? Well, we can't put a value in here because I can't determine what you took via data. So what I need to do is take the value from that bucket coming in and pump that up into my value where my min and my max goes, which tells me how much to heal you. So in this case, let's go down to stat mods, and I can mod any of these values up here by a stat, which is great because in Crowfall, every skill points to a stat. So when you level up a skill, you're actually leveling up a stat on the back end. Then that stat can be read into any of our powers, which is totally awesome. So in this case, I'm going to have our bucket go into the min and max value of the value right there. So I don't want to do it off of a stat though, because I'm sending down an accumulator bucket. So I put an accumulator in there and I put an accumulator in there. And just to make sure I don't misspell it, damage taken is the name of our bucket. We are going to put that in there. Okay, so now when the bucket value comes in, it's going to, well, right here it says it's going to be a scalar, but what I really want is a flat bonus by a fixed value, which means the value is coming in and then I want to do some math on it. In this case, it's a negative number. Well, if I weren't to change it, you would have just taken damage and then just take more damage. So I'm going to multiply it by a -1, which is going to take that value and turn it into a positive value. So I'm going to do the exact same thing for down here, flat bonus by fixed value, and we're going to multiply it by -1. Okay, so what this should do is every time now you take damage, goes into the bucket dumps every 1 second, comes into this effect, inverts that value, and then it applies to you. Okay, so the one thing looking at my accumulator that we didn't do was tell it how often to tick. In this case, we want it to tick once a second, so we're going to make this thing tick 15 times, and since it lasts 15 seconds, it automatically does the math and says, hey, tick every second. Okay, so what I need to do now is stop Unity because I messed with way too many things, save all these out, and then re-hit play. And I know there's a lot of little voodoo going on here with me flipping switches, but that's how it works. And I'm on a time limit, so I'm trying to get through this. And while that's loading again, so that was back to the original night tray, where we went with that guy. Ended up way more complicated, but just to show you how advanced the tool has become in 14 months that we've been working on it, this is what the Druid's tray looked like when we went to build her. And you'll notice how much more stuff we're doing. Let me zoom in. And you can see that, yes, there's 2 trays. There's a lot of stuff going on. But this is kind of the design work we do ahead of time to figure out what a character's powers are going to do. And it looks like Unity loaded in the background. Let's go to the Myrmidon. Let's look for my server. There it is. And there we are. Okay, so based on the power, taking damage, putting a buff icon up, that damage should heal every time that thing ticks. So we're going to use a campfire here. I'm going to go berserk, and then I'm going to go stand in the fire. And you'll notice all the damage I'm taking, and you'll notice all of the healing that's coming through. Bam, 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 bam. So this power is doing exactly what I want to right now. You'll notice as soon as the berserker buff wears off, I'm just taking damage, which is great. So, step 1, done. And it worked the first time. Yes! Yeah, a lot of this doesn't work the first time. Okay, so now what we need to do is we need to store up another bucket, but we don't want that bucket to pulse every second. We want that bucket to pulse at the end and deal all the damage that I took. So what we need to do here then is we need to add another effect. Because this hanging effect right here is set up to pulse for 15 seconds at 15 ticks, we can't reuse this bucket. This bucket is being used. So let's make another bucket. In this case, boom. We need to give it a duration, but we want this one to happen after all of the previous one has cleared out. So let's make this one last 15.35 seconds. Since this one lasts 15 seconds, we want to ensure the last tick of this goes off before this one dumps all the damage on you, okay? So just like our other one, we need to give it a group so nothing steps on it. So let's go to our Myrmidon groups. Let's look for our damage crash. Okay, so that's the buff group that this thing is in and has a priority of 1. Now, a lot of times, again, as I said, we'll create other buffs that just step on other buffs. So if you have 2 buffs that you want, say, the Legionnaire buff to get stepped on when somebody does something else with attack power, we put it in the same group as the Legionnaire buff, but this other one has a higher priority. So when it's cast, it just steps on that one, which is how buff groups work, okay? So we want this one to be an accumulator as well. We want it to happen when I get hit. We want it to happen when somebody hits me. Again, our event filter is stat changed, hit points, less than 0, and we need to create a bucket. Let's call this damage taken total. How's that sound? Because we don't want to name it the same thing as the previous one. Things collide. Just, yeah. Okay, so great. We've got our bucket named. We're not doing anything fancy with it. It's just storing up a value for 15.35 seconds, and then it's going to do its thing. So let's link an effect here. And in this effect, same thing as before. We don't want to let it crit because critting off of we're calling this the Berserker Crash, would really suck. So it's not going to crit, so we turn that box off. The stat that it's going to affect is hit points. So let's go down to hit points. Okay, and just like the previous one, we want to... actually, we don't want to invert this one because this one's a negative value. So let's go in and mod the min value and the max value with not a stat. Again, we want an accumulator. And we're going to want to use our damage taken total. And let's see. Pretty sure this one might just be a flat bonus. Oops, I can't save while Unity is running, otherwise it beeps at me. Okay. Again, we're going to start it and stop because typically I can just hit apply changes, but when I'm creating a lot of new stuff, it's not a big fan of that. Okay, so while Unity's loading, once again, I will show you the druid and where we went. So this is how complicated our trees became just because we're able to do more stuff. And now I will show you the Myrmidon demo. So we have one of these built for the Myrmidon. I'm not going to release it today because you all know that we like to do our updates, and we'll explain exactly what these powers do. So I blanked out all of the words except for the two powers we're working on today. One is called Berserk. It's the number 6 power. And then Bull Rush, which is the number 1 power. And Bull Rush is going to do something super cool, which is it's going to charge the player forward. But while it's happening, it's also going to make the player immune to the crash damage. So that is one of the ways that you, as the Myrmidon, can prevent this huge chunk of damage. And let's see if that works. So we're going to come over here. We're going to activate Berserker. We're going to start taking a bunch of damage. You see the heals. You see my health going up. I'm going to crash here in 7 seconds. Let's step out of the fire and see what happens. 3, 2, 1. Boom. I just took 26,582 damage, which was the small little amounts that I took up while the Berserker was rolling. So, it worked again! Usually demo day, nothing works. Your server won't load. You forget the magic checkbox. Yeah. Okay, so we're going to heal up again. And I'm going to show it to you guys again. In fact, we don't even need to see the heal text anymore. So I can just turn that off. Hide fly text. So we don't want to see this thing healing anymore. You can just watch the health bar and see that it's healing. Okay? So I'm going to go Berserk. Got my Berserk buff rolling. I'm taking damage, but if you look at my health bar, you just see it keep popping right back to where all the damage I was taking. And then I'm going to step out here. And when the Berserk wears off, boom, 33,000 points of damage. Yes. So if you see the Myrmidon here doing some crazy animations, he basically has his idols and his run-in right now. All of that, the rest of that stuff will get fixed over the next couple of weeks as they actually build it. It's not even fixing it, it's building it. This guy's just that new, and you're getting to see him all shiny out of the box. That's what happens. Okay, so we can now make the Myrmidon take a ton of damage based on all the damage he took. So what we're going to do is we're going to work on that other power that I called Bull Rush. So we're going to create a new power. It always puts our new powers in the root, so I need to put it in my Myrmidon demo directory. Boop. Okay, power new. So we need to rename this guy, and I already have a name for him. We're going to call him Myrmidon Demo Bull Rush. So you come up here. Oh, and before I get too deep in this, yeah, Val, if you have any questions now at this point, if people want to see something specific about that previous power, this would be a great time to. So this is what a power looks like, by the way, for anyone asking. You should see the food one, which, as Todd mentioned, I built last week. And there's a lot of stuff going on in these things. You just have to keep track of it.
Okay, Blair, I have it's not really a question, it's more of a comment. Will you put an indicator for how much damage you took for the Berserker clash?
Yes. So the UI is being worked on right now. Okay, so the question was, is there going to be an indicator for how much damage you've taken for the Berserker crash? And the answer is yes. So there's a little heart meter, and you might see the flash of it happening when I load in. It's still being hooked up, but it's going to fill up based on how much damage is in one of those buckets. So you will know, is it worthwhile for me to try and mitigate this crash, or can I just keep pushing through and let my healer worry about it? Of course, in our case, since we have such light healing, you're going to have to go run over some Druid Orbs or hopefully catch something. But you will know, and it's a heart meter. It starts to pulse really crazily when you get near the end, so you know, hey, I need to do something because I'm about to crash. It gives you those heebie-jeebies. And you're all like, I got the itchy skin. I'm going to crash. Anything else, Val?
Will you be able to remap keys for powers?
Yes. You will most certainly be able to do that. And I think you'll even be able to do it on a mouse if that was Ziz asking.
Actually, no, it wasn't Ziz asking.
So yes, you will be able to remap all of your powers to what keys you want to in the future. Again, at this point, it's more important for us to actually make the systems cool and the powers as cool than worry about rearranging them. That will happen in the future. It can even happen in the last week, and it would be great. It's just we don't need it right now. Was there any specific questions about the Berserker power before I jump over to the Bull Rush?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, so Bull Rush is the power that I want to put in the number 1 slot, as I indicated in this diagram. It's going to eliminate the crash, and it's going to do something called the sticky charge. Not ready to talk about that yet, but it's a hold charged power. It's very similar to the Knight Pursuit. And so what we need to do is make that a charged power, and it is charged. It is a hold and release power. So while you're holding the button down, it's doing its thing. It's going to trigger combos. It is reticle facing. It requires you to be grounded. It's not client immediate. It does put you in combat. And we need a time value in here. So full charge time, let's just say 1.95. And the max value is 1.95. And these are in seconds. So this is almost 2 seconds. The resource time this thing is going to, or resource type, is Fury, because all of the Myrmidon powers use Fury. Now, if you look at the power here, basically you're going to be berserk tanking, and there needs to be some gameplay in this. I just can't let you just, oh, hey, Bull Rush. So it's probably going to have a cost, so a reasonable cost, so that you know, man, I need to have at least X amount of Fury when my berserk is about ready to crash. Otherwise, I'm not going to be able to cast it. So let's just say it's 35 Fury right now. And it has an execution blackout, and I think it's got a global blackout of 1. That should work. Okay. Now, this power is going to do damage, and it's also going to put a buff on you, as you saw me put buffs on before. And let's not do it this way. Basically, we need to make it, instead of a basic DM, we need to make it something called an immediate DM, which is this green line. It's still a DM, but the difference is the immediate DM fires the instant this power goes off, this thing is going to fire. So what I'm going to do the instant this power goes off is I'm going to put a buff on you for 3 seconds. Let's just say it's 3 seconds right now. Okay. And it needs to go into a game effect group, like all of our things do. So, and we're going to call this one Crash Immunity. So, the group priority is 1. It has no icon. And all it's going to do is it's going to put on you what we call a tag. And this tag is basically a variable that we can look for in other powers to have interactions between the powers. So in this case, it's going to put a tag on you called, and I made this tag, Myrmidon Crash Immune, with a value of 1. And that is all this buff does, is it gives you a tag that says, this guy is Myrm Crash Immune. Okay? And we should clean our stuff up just to be hygienic here, because you want to be hygienic with your powers. And when this power wears off, we're going to add another NDM. This one has a red line. And what this one is going to do, let's redraw that so it looks clean, is it is going to step on that previous buff because we don't want this lingering around. Basically, it's good hygiene to clean up your game effects if you're not going to use them anymore. And if you tend to let game effects just kind of stack up over time, you're going to end up with bugs, right? It just happens. They're going to interact funkily because somebody didn't clean their stuff up. So what you do here is we need to make, of this exact same buff group, we're going to make it last 0.15 seconds. So as a player, you're not even going to see it. It's going to happen in a little over 1/10 of a second. And it's going to be of the same group, Myrmidon, Crash Immunity. However, it's going to be a priority 2. So when this power ends, it's going to fire off basically its final DMs and execute those game effects. In this case, it's going to fire a hanging game effect that lasts 1/10 of a second of the exact same priority of this guy, and it's just going to step on it, which means that that tag is going to get removed from you the second you stop charging. Now, if you played a knight, you know that you charge as long as you hold the button down. So normally you could just say, hey, this thing's going to expire after 3 seconds, but this power has a variable length. It may have been somebody pressed it for a tap or they held it down for the full duration. So having this end chain will clean that up for us. Let's see if it works. So I'm going to save it, and we're going to go back into game, hit the play button. A great time for questions. Or is everybody asleep? It's it's not art.
Bull Rush. Here we go. It's kind of long though.
Okay.
If Bull Rush is a main power and it's on a somewhat short cooldown, how will you keep players from always negating the effects of the crash? Is there some kind of balancing mechanism to keep players from using it before every crash?
Well, sure. I mean, you could stun, knock down. Okay, so the question was about Bull Rush, because if you can't hear Val. But the question was about Bull Rush was, if the cooldown is short, these players are going to be able to negate the damage all the time because they're going to Bull Rush right when they're crashing. And there's a bit of a timing game there in that the ability doesn't last very long, less than 2 seconds. So you're going to have to time it just right. Also, you can crowd control that player via stunning them or knocking them down so they can't press that button. And they may not have the resource to cast it. So if they don't have, right now we set it to 35 just as an arbitrary value. As we start playtesting it, we're going to start tuning it. And it might be that thing is 55 resource. So if you just keep going all crazy and you have 10 fury by the time this thing casts, you may not be able to get it off. Again, that will come out in tuning. And it may be that it needs to have a long cooldown. We don't know yet. We just started making this stuff. Okay. So.
Okay, another question?
Sure. Another question?
If the Minotaur will be able to use attacks on the move, similar to how the Knight's basic left click attack can be used on the move, will it be able to?
Will the melee classes be able to use their left clicks on the move? We are currently experimenting. I mean, we started experimenting back in December with movement and left clicks. It's still what I would like to call experimental in that it may not stay that way forever. We will see. So right now we're going to build him with it because that's where everyone is, but we're going to experiment and see if we can make it good with the new high-speed tech that we've gotten in the last couple of weeks.
Are you crowd control immune during Berserk?
You are not crowd control immune during Berserk. Question was, are you crowd control immune during Berserk? No. Berserk is going to do a bunch of things, and if we could get Bull Rush working, then we're going to go in and I'm going to show you some of those things. But the ability to be crowd controlled while you're berserking is part of the way that you can force a Myrmidon who's just mitigated a bunch of damage to take it all at once and perhaps kill him. So he needs to be able to be CC'd during that. Now, he will have his ultimate power on C, which we haven't gone into yet, and I'm not going to disclose it today, which may be his last-ditch way to avoid taking crash damage. We'll see. Okay, so Bull Rush. What did it do? Basically, right now, all we have this power doing is putting this tag called Myrm Crash Immunity on you, and it should last until this power ends. So, because it has no icon, I'm going to go and look at a variables hanging out on my player. So basically, this player has 2 tags on him right now. He's a player, and he's got the Myrm buff, or the Myrm tag, so I know he's a Myrm. I'm going to hit my number 1 ability, and bam, in combat comes up, and Myrm Crash Immune came up while the power was going. So that means that it's definitely applying. So let's see how long that lasted. 1001, 1002. Okay, so I basically have 2 seconds to try and mitigate the damage. Now, we didn't make anything happen beyond this tag go on the player. So we now need to go tell the berserk power. Nope, not you, you. We need to tell the berserk power that if the caster has a tag, Myrm crash immune greater than 0, then, oh no, we actually want to do that less than 1. So if that tag is less than 1, meaning it's 0, do the damage. If the caster has the tag and it's equal to 1, it's not going to happen. So let's see if we can avoid that big hit. I'll show you the power working correctly. I'm berserk. Taking a bunch of damage here. 7, 6, 5, 4, 3. Berserk bull rush. I'm bull rushing. And you'll notice I didn't take the big damage hit because I was bull rushing. Now, of course, you're going to have to use your imagination here because there's no animations and there isn't fly text for things like tags. But I will show it to you where I don't press bull rush. Berserking. Taking a bunch of damage, healing back up, healing back up. Let's jump out of the fire. And I'm not pressing bull rush this time. And boom. You notice I took the big hit for 22k. So it works.
So I want to confirm that they're understanding correctly. Bull rush makes you immune to damage?
No. The question was, does bull rush make you immune to damage? No. Bull rush makes you immune to the crash damage. So the crash damage is all of the damage that we stored up in that second accumulator bucket for the amount of damage you took in that 15 seconds. Basically, it becomes a timing game. If you're good at it, you will really enjoy it. If you're not so good at timing games, you may not like the Myrmidon. Because you're going to end up taking these big spiky bursts of damage. Okay, so we can now do other cool things to Berserk. So Berserk is also going to make you do much more damage. And I kind of want to make it do much more damage based on the amount of damage you take. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this second accumulator down here, and I'm going to put another accumulator, or I'm sorry, not accumulator, another effect off of our first accumulator. Remember, this one's pulsing every second, right? So we're going to come in here and we are going to create a buff. And let's just say this buff lasts 15 seconds. And the name of this buff is Berserk damage. Berserk. Now Berserker sounds cool. Berserker damage. Okay. And we're going to do it to the damage bonus value, which is our most powerful stat in game, in my opinion, because it just flat out is a multiplier on your damage. And we're going to do it to, we're going to make a min value and a max value stat mod. So basically, this is, again, how we feed in the value from the bucket up in here. And we need to make it wrong button, an accumulator. And we need to do it based off this damage taken variable. Damage taken. Damage taken. And we need to do, again, a flat bonus by a fixed value. Or do we want to do percent of... No, I think we want to do a flat bonus by a fixed value. Now, since the value is going to be so large, we need to multiply it by a very small number. Otherwise, you are going to get an insane damage buff. So in this case, it's a negative value, so we need to make it positive. So we need to go 0.0015. So these are just multipliers that are going to go on your character. Oops. Yep. I know. I know, Unity. You don't like me saving while you're running. I get it. Okay, we need to give it a group, otherwise bad things will happen. This is going into the Myrmidon damage bonus buff, and it's got a priority of 1. Okay. So let's see if this thing even goes up there. You know what? I want to make it blue because I want you to be able to see it in, where's my buff type? Force buff. We want this thing to be blue when it goes on you. Let's see if that happens. So I want berserk, and you'll see I now have a buff called berserker damage in addition to the berserker buff. Now, to see how much that's giving me, we're going to need to look at my stats. And we have this big, giant here's my raw stats. Yeah, you guys don't get to see this, but there are tons and tons of stats happening and going on in the background. We're just tracking them. And again, near the end, that will be something that's super important. Right now, it's not. Okay, so let's go berserk. Let's heal up a little bit, actually. I'm going to go berserk. And you can see my damage bonus value there. You see it's going up. It's at 12%. It's at 18%. It's at 24%. It's at 30%. So my damage is just cycling up. Let me mitigate this so I don't kill myself. I'm bull rushing. I mitigated the damage. So, and you'll notice, so hey, look, the damage bonus is sticking around. That's odd. I should have been hygienic with my game effects and clean this damage bonus up after the big pulse. So what we need to do here is we need to put an effect on our bottom accumulator because this is when the buff wears off. And basically what we need to do is say, hey, get rid of all stacks of this damage bonus buff. So we come in here and we go to a duration. We need it just long enough, 1 server frame essentially, for it to clear out those game effects. So we'll find the buff ID, damage bonus buff. We'll set the priority to 2. 2 is greater than 1. And basically what's going to happen is this is going to wipe out, in theory, the previous damage bonus buff that I was getting when the thing crashes. So let's go back to the game. Let's look at T. Blair. Okay, so my damage bonus is at -10 right now because all tanks in our game have -10% of damage. Let's go berserk. I'm berserking. As I'm taking damage, you'll notice my damage bonus every second is ticking up. 13, 18, 24, 27. Yeah, you can get this thing pretty high. I need to prevent the crash. I'm going to kill myself. And you'll notice the second the berserk wore off, my damage bonus went back down to where it should be at -10% because I was hygienic with my game effects and cleaned them up. Woe be the person who doesn't do that. Val, any questions?
Sorry, that was a question for you. Did disciplines get the same process?
Do disciplines get the same process? Well, we're going to talk about disciplines in a little bit. So, and that question really doesn't say anything unless it means that do disciplines that have powers come through this? Everything that has a power in the game comes through the power editor. You have to be pretty good at knowing how all this works to build powers that make sense, that just aren't terrible and broken.
Okay, will there be some way to offset bull rush timing considering lag?
Since we have our client prediction, you should have a reasonable amount of time, and it should be fairly obvious that you're going to make it or not. We've been doing a lot of work. However, there is a fractional amount of time in between your machine and the server. Since the tag instantly happens on the server, it's basically down to internet time. So there is that.
Let's see.
Man, I love watching this guy run. It's so funny because he's faster than the other guys, but he feels big and loping. Urgh.
Are you afraid that the Myrmidon won't be balanced?
Are you afraid the Myrmidon won't be balanced? I'm afraid every new archetype we make won't be balanced. But we work it out. We have our spreadsheets. We put in reasonable values. And at the end of the day, they've generally been pretty balanced across the board. I mean, the people thought Druid was going to be ridiculous, Ranger was going to be ridiculous, Champion was going to be ridiculous. They're all in the same ballpark.
Any plans for a power to transfer the berserk crash damage to an enemy?
Any plans to transfer the berserk damage to an enemy? Not right now. That's interesting. Again, it would have to probably replace Bull Rush because we don't want you to have too many options. It should be somewhat risky, and you should be good at using it.
How does the Minotaur's speed compare to the Legionnaire?
How does the Minotaur speed compare to Legionnaire? He is 0.5 slower than the Legionnaire. The Legionnaire moves at 7 meters a second. The Myrmidon moves at 6.5 meters a second.
What are you drinking in that giant black stein?
What are you drinking in this giant black stein? It is water because I am nonstop talking up here and my mouth gets a little dry.
I think that's it.
Okay.
So you got 2 minutes for final thoughts and to wrap it up.
2 minutes. Well, this totally worked and I am kind of shocked I didn't make any mistakes. I will throw a bonus thing that I'm going to do in here.
I'm even more shocked.
Oh, God. Thanks, Todd.
Not as shocked as I am.
I'm shocked by how humble you are.
Todd's drunk.
Yeah, Todd's drunk. Oh, so what we're going to add in here really quick is we are also going to triple the fury generation rate of the Myrmidon the instant he presses it. While this buff is going on. So Fury period. Basically, we're going to make his stuff come in super fast while this is going on, and it needs to last the duration of the buff. No doggy, you can't ask a question. And Fury regen speed in there. Bam. So while he's berserking, his regeneration rate of his resource will be insane. So Fury or Berserker is something you're going to be doing nonstop on this guy. So you better get good at figuring out how to mitigate the crash or taking big, huge, chunky spikes of damage.